Hi, this is Rob from DMBAlmanac.com with This Week in Dave Matthews Band History. In This Week in 2001, DMB played their final shows as a quintet. On May 11th and May 12th, 2001, they played 2 shows in the Woodlands, Texas that were the last with no guests. Then played May 14th and 15th in Albuquerque and Phoenix with members of Soul Live guesting. 3 days later, frequent guest Butch Taylor joined the rest of the tour and played each show until he left the band in 2008, after Rashawn had joined and in an effective swap with Tim Reynolds. Also notable here is the debut of Big Eyed Fish at the Albuquerque show in response to Signs the previous week. You can find all the guest spots and song debuts at dmbalmanac.com and follow us on Facebook and Threads to get daily updates with everything that happened that day in the band's history.
Have you ever stopped to think about the fans behind a band? What is it about the music that keeps fans coming back for more? Or is there more? My name is Renae Lipsmeyer, and I am the host of this podcast, The Space Between Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the fans of the Dave Matthews Band. Each week, a fellow DMB fan joins the show to discuss their journey with the band. Welcome to the Space Between Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Space Between Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the fans of one band. If you have never listened to this podcast before, the one band that we are going to talk about, well, kind of, is the Dave Matthews Band. The Dave Matthews Band was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame last year in 2024. They started in 1991 in a small city. It was small then, Charlottesville, Virginia, and now they are still, after all of those years, touring the whole world. So in every episode, I have a guest of the band come on the show to talk about their experience, their journey with this band that we've all found. So like every episode, I have a guest. So I am going to let him tell us who he is, where in the world are you, and tell us something about you.
Hello all, my name is Rodrigo Simas. Thank you very much for having me. I live in Lisbon right now. I'm from Brazil actually. I lived my whole life in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, but now I'm living in Lisbon for the last 4 years, more or less. And basically, I am a music fan, music nerd, and photographer. I work for many bands, and I'm also a graphic designer.
Awesome.
So yeah, I graduated as a graphic designer. So I worked
Awesome.
like for 10 to 15 years as a graphic designer and art director. And I used to love photography, but it was always like a hobby, not a hobby, like working as a professional, but it was not a full-time job for me.
Right,
Always
right.
doing, and I always worked as working on concert production and road management. So like in Brazil, they always need people to kind of be a guide for the international bands that go there. So if Dave Matthews Band is going to Brazil, probably the local promoter will have someone that's the promoter rep, the person who is representing the promoter, to be with the band all the time, kind of being a guide, translator, something like that. Yeah. So there's a function that we always have in Brazil, and they are kind of the local road managers. So this person works with the tour manager for the band to make sure the tour goes smoothly. So that's how, not only in Brazil, most of the countries that are non-English speaking, they have someone like this just to, walk around and show the band and know the ways in and the ways out and whatever you need to do and make the bridge between the band and the venue, the band and whatever they need. So
Right.
I worked with a bunch with that in Brazil. And when I used to work as promoter rep or whatever road manager in Brazil, I'd always ask the bands that I was working with to photograph if I could also photograph.
Sure.
So that's how I started doing the photography thing.
So back up just a little bit. So tell us about when did you get your first camera and when did you think, okay, there is something to this that I really kind of want to learn more about?
When I got my first, I don't have any idea.
Were you a child or?
I was a child, yeah, probably. But as a graphic designer, I was always interested in image, right?
Yes,
in the and being like a music lover also, and growing up in the 80s. So I was born in 79. So
Me too.
yeah. Oh, cool. I was born in 79. So I grew up 80s, but I really started digging to music in the early 90s.
Yes.
So around 91, 92, my first concert was 91 and or 92, something like that. And but those were my musical landscape started on that time. And I'm a rock and metal fan, and
Uh-huh.
rock and metal is there's a lot of visual
Oh,
graphic in terms
yes.
of covers, and there's it's probably the coolest style in that matter, like of at least when you're a kid or a teenager that you want to see like skeletons and like very very the covers, and you buy the album because of the cover. But back in the 90s, like there was no streaming, so you really bought the albums because of the covers. So
Right.
when you got something like Iron Maiden with the big skeleton in the
I
front,
remember that.
people would take and say, oh my god, this should be good, and you buy the records because of the cover.
Yeah.
So I was always visually interested in this kind of thing. So
That makes total sense.
yeah, so that was why I started doing graphic design, and then photography was a part of it, because
Right.
in graphic design you also study photography. It's part of the whole
Sure.
curriculum. So that was probably my first kind of professional interaction with photography, was in the university studying design and then studying also photography. So yeah.
Gotcha. You made me just kind of go back in time when you were discovering, like, just talking about the covers of
Yeah,
albums. One of my very first jobs was working at a music store back when there were music
I worked
stores.
4 years and almost 5 years in a music store.
I loved it. It was my
Yeah,
most favorite job.
yeah.
And the owners challenged me to discover new music, like they're how I discovered Stevie Ray Vaughan, things that may not have come to me, but I'm so glad that they
Oh
did.
yeah.
But like you were saying, people would buy the albums. When I was working, it was mostly CDs. We did have a little bit of tapes and some vinyl, but in the late 90s, everybody wanted the CDs. But
CDs, yeah.
people would buy the CD based just completely off the artwork that was on the jacket. And I did too. I mean, think about how famous like that one album of Nirvana is, based
Oh,
just
100%.
on the photography that's on the front of that album. And the story continues with that album. Something like that baby ended up suing because he was
Oh
on the
yeah.
cover of the
Oh yeah.
Nirvana
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes pretty deep. I love that. We talk about the Dave Matthews Band, of course, on here, but I like to know, back in 91, just like you were talking, that's kind of when you really found music. What was it that you really leaned on? Like, who were the bands that you were listening to in the early 90s?
Mostly metal.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of Iron Maiden, lots of Metallica, lots of Black Sabbath. My first concert was Black Sabbath.
Wow.
So yeah, Black Sabbath with Dio singing. So that was 91 or 92 in Rio. My first concerts were Black Sabbath, Faith No More in
Uh-huh.
Rio,
Uh-huh.
and Iron Maiden in also in Rio. Those are the three. It was all around like 91, 92. So the three were like very close together.
Right.
So yeah, so those were my three, and that was a lot of Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses was huge by
Huge.
that time,
Yeah,
by the
huge.
late 80s, and that was when they were really good. So
Yes.
and they released the Use Your Illusions were around that, like
Mhm.
92 or something like that, 91, 92. So all those bands, had Hot Chili Peppers, all those bands were like getting huge around that time.
Right.
Also Faith No More, like Faith No More was huge in Brazil, like huge back in 92 when they released The Real Thing. So and but a lot of metal, like European metal, like
Uh-huh.
European metal is bigger in South America than it is in the US. So
Right.
we have we I don't know nowadays, but back in the day, bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and Scorpions and all those they call classic metal
Uh-huh.
were huge in Brazil. So I listened to a lot of this kind of bands, and then we
Right.
started getting bands from the US metal scene like Pantera. That was all early 90s also.
Hmm.
So then because the American metal is more like groove oriented, when the European metal is more straightforward stuff.
Gotcha. How did you
Um,
find these bands? Like, did you just go buy, like you were talking about, just go buy things and listen to it and go, oh, I like this? Or did you have someone that was kind of leading you, like, check out this band, check out this band?
just by that time was rock magazines, a lot
That's
of,
right.
yeah, yeah,
Isn't it funny the things we forget about? We're like, oh, yeah, I was actually
yeah.
reading magazines that
Magazines, yeah. I still read magazines to this day, but that time was the only thing that you
the
would
only
have.
thing.
Yeah, and you have to trust the critics, right? The reviews and
Right.
all this. And it's funny. But and also I worked like 4 years, more than four, almost five, I would guess, in a record store,
Yes,
in a
that's right.
metal record store.
Aha,
So
particularly metal.
yeah, it's a rock metal in Rio. So I
Awesome.
worked there from 15 to 19 years old, something like
Wow.
that.
So you
Yeah.
learned a lot in those years. I mean, it's
So a
like
lot.
working in a library,
Yeah.
literally. You just are going to take in information. And we know how people respond when they're buying music. They can't wait to tell you, the checker or whoever, like, this band is really awesome. You should check them out. I
Oh yeah,
mean,
and by that time, record store were like the old record store. People would just go, not even buy music, just go there
right.
to spend the day there, listening to music and talking to
Yes.
other music fans.
That was
So
a
that
good,
was the best experience. So I made a lot of friends and knew a lot of people, and like and would listen to music mostly the whole day. So that was really cool. And I could listen to everything on the store,
right.
and also all my earnings, my monthly salary would go straight to buy.
Oh,
Like I don't think they ever paid me the full salary, because I would buy stuff every
no.
month,
Right.
almost the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because I started working in this store because my father said, "Hey, I cannot afford to buy
Right.
your CDs,
Right.
the amount of CDs you want per month."
Right.
So
Right.
that's, and he said, like, I can give you a few, but I cannot. So you have to start earn your own money. So that's how I started.
And aren't you so thankful that he said that? Because it
Oh
really
yeah,
kind of
100%,
catapulted you into a world that you didn't even
a
know
hundred
you were about
percent.
to find.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I loved it. The first years there were really cool. Like imagine like a 15, 16-year-old kid
Yes.
working on cities, or like it's very cool. It's very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I those were some of the best times. Working in a music store was definitely like one of the highlights of my life. Looking back at the time, did I realize what I was doing? Of course not. Of course not.
Uh-huh.
I was enjoying it, but I didn't realize like all of the life like influential things that I was going to learn that would carry throughout
Oh
my
yeah.
life because
Oh
of
yeah.
that time I spent at that
Yeah.
job. So it's wild, but I love it.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. So we know
Cool.
that, metal was a big part of your life.
Yeah.
So obviously the Dave Matthews Band is not a heavy metal band.
No.
So how in
Yeah.
the world did you make that leap, if you will?
Well, there's one thing about Dave Matthews Band, and a lot of people don't know that. Dave's a big rock and metal fan.
Gotcha.
And when he was a teenager or something, he used to listen to exactly those bands. It's like AC/DC,
Really? Yeah.
Judas Priest, Iron Maiden. He loved that band,
Mhm.
those bands, and he still likes them. It's not
Yeah.
something that he will listen to every day, but he still and he knows the songs.
Sure.
Like I've seen
Sure.
him singing Iron Maiden stuff.
Sure.
So and we talk a lot. We talk a lot about that because I'm always showing him stuff, and Stefan
New
is a big
stuff.
metal fan. So
Yeah,
I'm
I think
always
I think
showing Stefan stuff. But anyway, Dave's music is kind of, it's not metal, of course, but it's all based on guitar riffs.
hmm
Most of their songs are like it's a guitar riff based songs.
right.
90%. No, no, no. But I would say 80% of Dave's songs are based on a guitar riff
Right.
that keeps just repeating itself. Gray
That's
Street,
right.
Satellite, whatever, you like, Tripping Billies, Ants, and that's basically what metal bands do.
Really? Huh.
But Dave is acoustic.
Yes.
That's the only difference. But the structure of the songs and the guitar, like the riff based songs, is exactly what metal bands do. So it's not far from metal, but in my opinion, it's 100% metal. But it's only acoustic, but it's
Right.
acoustic metal. And at the power chords, we use a lot of power chords, which another thing that metal uses a lot. Like the way he composed, the way he thinks, is because he listened to that when he was a teenager, and that stuck with him. So he
Yes.
just mixed that with the African music that he loves, and the percussion and the grooves, and that's all the African influence. And of course, he has many other influences, but there's a lot of rock and metal, classic rock and metal, in his main influence, and the way he plays, you can see that.
Very interesting.
So that's how connected with me basically because of the riffs and Carter's drumming, which is a lot of progressive rock. And Carter's also has a lot of groove in it, but there's a lot of like, if you compare Carter to Newport from Rush, for example, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of progressive rock and rock drummers. Carter has a lot of John Bonham kind of vibes sometimes. They even play Zeppelin songs a lot because Dave likes it.
Yes.
So there's a lot of stuff that, goes along. But how I came to Dave, because, well, besides metal, I would listen a lot to classic rock. So Zeppelin, Rush is my favorite band. Besides DMB, but Rush is my favorite band. Rush is by far the band that I most listen my whole life, like by far, way more than Dave.
Yes.
Because Rush follows me since I was a teenager, and Dave came back later on.
Of course, yeah.
And Rush has like 30 studio albums or more.
Yes.
Dave has like 7 or 8.
Right.
So Rush just have a lot more albums. So, and all like old prog rock bands that I love, like Yes, King Crimson, and Genesis, Jethro Tull, all those are my favorites, like ever. Jethro Tull is probably, like, if I had to choose my like top 3, 4, 5 would be, besides Dave, but Zeppelin, Jethro Tull, Iron Maiden, and all those bands are like my really top
your
bands.
go-tos.
Yeah. So I always, that's like, I would always follow that kind of music. And in 98 or 99, the band went to Brazil for the first time, Dave.
Awesome.
And it was a festival called Free Jazz Festival in Brazil.
Oh, awesome.
It was like an annual kind of festival. It's a small festival. It's like they were releasing before the Score the Streets. It was already they were already promoting before the Score the Streets on tour, and they went to Brazil in this festival to play in venues like for 5,000-6,000 people. So they were already playing in stadiums in the US, and they came to Brazil to play in like 5,000-6,000 people.
Wow.
And the lineup was like a Brazilian act, and Ben Harper and Dave. And by that time, I was a big Ben Harper fan, because in the beginning of his career, Ben Harper was he was not like a metal guy, but he had a lot of rock, like heavy rock influence. The first 2 or 3 albums are he was kind of a Jimi Hendrix meets Bob Marley kind of vibe. Yeah. So I was into that.
Yes.
And Dave was playing the same night. So I bought the tickets to see Ben, not to see Dave. I don't even know what Dave was.
Right. You don't know till you know.
And a friend of mine a week before, or a few days before the show, said, "Hey, I know you're coming to band, but I saw a video on MTV of the band that's playing afterwards. It's called the Dave Matthews Band. And it seems pretty cool. And I think you like, they have violin, and there's a European band that we were very addicted to around that time, that's called Skyclad. It's a very cult small band in Europe, Skyclad. And they had a violin also, so I was very addicted to like metal with violin, stuff like that. And then said, "Oh, there's a band that's going. They had a violin, and the drummer's crazy, and we should stick around after the band. We should just stay there, don't leave." And I was like 98. I was around 18, maybe something like that. So I was high, I was drunk, I was everything on that show, because when Ben Harper ended, I was in another planet. But I said, "Oh, I'm here." Yeah. But let's
ready
see
to receive. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. And then it started, and I was like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Right, exactly.
It was kind of, oh my God, like it was one of those moments. After that night, I was like the day after. I remember going to the day after the show. I went to a store and bought the first 3 Under the Table, Crash, and Before the Score of the Streets. Like the day after, and then I started to enter that universe and to discover that they'd never repeat the set list, and started to download. By that time, it was still not like kind of download, but I found a guy in Brazil that had a lot of, he would record those CDRs, like the blank CDs.
Yes.
And he would sell copies of live shows.
He would sell them?
Yeah, in Brazil.
Okay, gotcha.
Because we didn't have the access to record them.
Right.
To record or to download it. It was 98, so it was still the beginning of everything and download stuff.
He saw an opportunity. He was like, "I got it for you. Here you go."
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to remember, but I know that I found this guy, and he had a lot of Dave Matthews Band concerts, and he was selling those as CDR. So I bought a bunch of those live shows,
Yes.
and became addicted fast. Like by that was 98, so in like 1 or 2 years I was already like the biggest DMB fan. I consumed everything that I could between
Right.
those 2 years. So when
So
it was
were
go
you
ahead.
shocked? Like, okay, so the first time you ever heard of them, saw them was live, and
Yes.
then you go and you buy the records the day or the
And the funny
albums the
part
day
is that
after.
I don't remember shit about that show because
Well, that's good. That's kind of a good
yeah,
thing.
yeah, I don't remember like zero. Just have the feeling, that it was so good, and I
It was
went
so
and
good.
I bought all the CDs the next day, but I don't remember anything about the show itself.
But you got that feeling. You got
I
that
got the
like, ooh,
feeling.
I need
Yeah.
more. I need a little more of whatever that was.
Yes. Yes.
So even if you remembered or not, you went and you bought the studio albums,
Yes.
and then you picked up and you got these live albums
Yeah.
from the dude
Random
that was
shows.
selling them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So at what point, and I know that you kind of knew that they didn't do the same set list, but like there's such a distinct,
I started to dig deep
right?
to discover a lot of stuff that's not normal for or like metal bands, for example, rock bands. They don't play unless it's like a Pearl Jam or something like that. But
Uh-huh.
it's not normal for a band. And that was the time that we didn't have internet, has so we
Right.
couldn't look online to see what the bands were playing. So unless
Right.
you were like very into that, you wouldn't know that they play different set lists every night.
That's
Or
true.
I couldn't, like, it's not like nowadays that if you got a band like whatever, Metallica changed the set list. Let me see. ACDC, for example, that we talked earlier, because Dave likes it. So if ACDC starts to tour today, we see the set list just after the show. We discover which set list they are playing, and we
Uh-huh.
know that the set list won't change to the last show of the tour, probably.
Right.
And that was not like back in 90s, 80s, and 90s. Like, you would go to a show without knowing, like, you could
Anything.
repeat the band could repeat the set list every night, but you wouldn't know unless you went to more than one concert,
Right.
right? So that was, everything was so new for me. Like, I would never heard about a band that would change the set list every night and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Uh
And then just
so
how distinctly different the album versions sound between the
oh
live
yeah,
versions,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
so, you must have picked up on that when you started getting those live albums. Like, well, now I've heard this before, but it sounded way different on their
yeah,
studio album.
yeah. And right after I started listening to them, they released Listen Supported.
Oh, so it was live.
It was
So
live,
good.
and it was
Yeah.
official release and a DVD, so I could see the
Yes.
band also, and that's a
Ooh, that's a whole different
great
level.
show. Yes, so it's crazy, but on that time it mattered. How, like, to
Did.
see the band live and see. So I watched that show. I don't remember how many. Like, I could do all the drumming parts, like, playing air drumming for the whole
That's
show. Like,
funny.
like, I watched that a gazillion time.
Well, I do it too in the car, but mine is not spot on like I'm sure yours was. But I'm all about like
Yeah,
using the whatever in the car
yeah.
to do my
But
drum solo.
I watched that so much. So, and then on the end of 2000, I started a fan website in Brazil called DM Brazil.
Okay.
dmbrazil.net. And that website, so I started the website by November of 2000, and the band went for the second time to Brazil in January 2001 to play in Rock in Rio. So the band went there to play in Rio, and I started the website like 3 months before it. They traveled to Brazil. They had a Brazilian friend who lived in Charlottesville, that's their city, and she was a manager of a Brazilian food restaurant in Charlottesville,
Wow.
and that Carter and Roy used to go a lot. So they became
Okay.
friends there.
Okay.
And when they traveled to Brazil in January 2001, they brought her with them just for fun,
Wow.
just to
Wow.
make them company and to help them with the language and blah 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 and all
Translation.
that stuff.
Yes.
So she went there, and she knew that I was starting the website. So she invited me to the hotel, and she connected me to the guys. So that was my first personal
Right.
meeting with all of them.
Right.
And yeah,
That's
so
very
that's
early.
yeah,
It's very
2001.
early for you. Yeah, very early for you.
So that was my second concert in Rock in Rio. And also, so as I started the website, they were very interested in what, because the band in Brazil, in South America, they were not big as they were in the US. In the US, they were a stadium band already. And in Brazil, the 2 years before, they would play for like 5,000-6,000 people. And then they played in Rock in Rio, which is huge, but they were the first of the three international bands, so they were not even near being a headliner.
Right.
So it was great for them to have a Brazilian fan starting a website for them. So they were very like,
interesting.
They were interested and they want to know what were my plans. So I also got the contact from people in management because they were there too.
Mm-hmm.
And they also gave me like a backstage pass for the Rock in Rio show because they wanted me close by and they liked me. So that's how the whole thing started, basically.
So what were your intentions? I have to know, what were your intentions with starting the website?
My website was just a fan thing, just to help them and promote their music. I was just such a music fan that I wanted more people to know them. Yeah. I believed so much in their music that I just wanted to spread. I knew, by that time, I already knew that they were huge in the US. And they were like not very small, but small to medium in Brazil. And I wanted them to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that was the main thing, just to connect the Dave Matthews Band. Because in South America, even here in Europe, it's more like a cult band. It's more like it's very different. Yeah, it's very different than it's in the US. And also here it's more like, do you know the Dave Matthews Band? Oh my God! So you understand music. It's very different from the US. Here you have to dig deep to get to Dave Matthews Band. It's not, because in the US it's the country. It's like like it's more like a fraternity white people's band, it is.
Heard that too.
And people are more like, what the fuck is Dave Matthews? Like, we don't like Dave. They never heard about Dave Matthews, but they just don't like it. Yes. And here's different. Here's like, oh my God, the Dave Matthews Band? They are very good. So you know about music, right? That's how it's more like in Brazil. And in Brazil and Europe, their audience is way more rock oriented. So people who like classic rock and more prog rock bands, those are the fans that end up being a Dave Matthews Band fan. So that's it's awesome. Also different. So
I just had a guy on this show that lives in Scotland. And so he had to dig for the music because this was before the band had ever been there. And so he found it. And so it is true how different it is for someone that lives outside of the United States to have found it, but then also to realize that they didn't get a lot of opportunities to see them live.
Oh yeah, never.
The guy in Scotland, he had to come to America to see them live for the first time.
Yep.
He really loved the band, and yeah, you can tell he kind of dug into their musicianship to even find them. So I always love stories and I've had several people on the show that of course don't live in the United States, and those are often some of my most favorite stories because they really had to dig to find it, and I enjoy that story.
Yeah, it's like when the first times they went to Brazil, it was like, this is a once in a lifetime chance to see the band. It still is. The band's going there in June. It will be like the 6th or 7th time. It's not too many times, No,
like, not in the history they have.
Yeah, So it's still like, for a lot of people, it's a once in a lifetime experience. So people are like very passionate about it. Because of that, you might only see them once.
Right. That's
so
a big deal.
That show is a big deal for people.
Right.
So yes, 2001. So the whole objective of the website was promote their music and make connections with other fans. That was basically the point. And that was it. That was 2001. And then they only came back to Brazil in 2008. So 7 years of difference without playing Brazil. And basically what kept them alive in Brazil was the website. And because I started, so it was not, I didn't start it, but I helped it. The tribute bands playing in Brazil. So we started to have a lot of tribute bands performing in different states in Brazil. And I organized the biggest one, which was in Rio, called 3 Steps. And because they started as a trio, acoustic trio. So that was 3 Steps.
I like that.
And they became kind of, for tribute bands, they became big. But there was a lot. There was like 6, maybe 7 tribute bands spread it across Brazil. And with the website, I would not only organize the concerts, the dates, but I would also promote the concerts.
Right.
And for a few of them, I would even write the set list and help them figure out which songs to play, and like just kind of conduct whatever was going to happen, because we had to organize. So this band is playing in Rio, so the next month we'll have another band playing in Sao Paulo, and the next one will play. So we had to do like organize the timings and everything else, and everything was promoted by my website. So basically, it was a major force for the Brazilian fans.
Wow.
So those, and once again, tribute bands in these countries, in Brazil, or not here in Europe, but in South America, tribute bands are very important, because the real bands don't go there to play. What the fans have are the tribute bands. Without the tribute bands, you don't hear those songs live. Never.
It's keeping the music
bands,
alive.
They keep the music alive. So tribute bands are very important.
Yes.
I think they are important everywhere, but in countries that those bands don't go, they are even more important.
Yes.
So when the band came back in 2008, they were very happy to see that my website kept their music alive, and with all the cover bands and all doing all that. But they were even bigger than when they came in 2001. So when they came, they asked for. I was already in touch with management for all those years. Oh, sorry. So I jumped around. Between those 7 years, I started to go to the US for the shows as a fan.
Wow.
Just flying in to
I'll
catch like
quite the flight.
Yeah, just like I would always go, let's go to Disney World and go to 3 Florida shows, something like that, would combine trips and do stuff. But I would start going every year. And first, because I wanted to keep in touch with the band and management.
Yes.
They started giving me like lounge passes and stuff like that, and then they would give me backstage pass. But every time that I went there, my main thing was contact the band to make sure they still remember me, and that we keep in touch of everything that I'm doing. But also, I would always ask for a photo pass, because I wanted to have original material for my website.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I wanted to have pictures that only I had to DM Brazil, and keep the site updated with, and also cover those concerts with material, like exclusive material for the Brazilian fans.
Yes.
So I would always ask for a photo pass, and I started showing those pictures for the band and for management. So they started liking my pictures. So when they went back in 2008, they were very happy about the work of the website, but they also asked me if I knew any photographer for that South American run in 2008. And I said, I know a bunch, but I would love to try. And they already knew my work. So they said, we will not pay you, but you can go with us, and you won't have backstage access for pictures, but you can shoot the whole show from the front, from the pit.
Right.
And I said, of course, that was like a dream come true.
It's a no-brainer, right?
Yes. And I said, okay, of course, let's do it. So I already did that tour in 2008, being their photographer, not a professional. I still was not getting paid, but I did the whole tour being their photographer in Brazil. Like, I was the only one who was approved to shoot the whole concert every night. And then they liked the results. And then 2 years later, they came back to Brazil. So 2010 was the third time they went to Brazil. 2001, 7 years, 2008, and then 2 years, 2010. And when they went in 2010, then they hired me for the first time to be their photographer, but then starting to pay me. Right. And after that, I just start to go to the US, working for DMB, and started very like just 1 or 2 weeks. Then the 1 or 2 weeks became like a month, and then became the full tour. And it was very gradual. And because the main thing is that the band, it's not, of course you have to be a good photographer, but I don't think for any of the bands that I ever worked, that's not the main thing. You have to be a good photographer, but the band has to go along. They have to feel relaxed, and they have to feel secure, and they have to trust you. So trust is way more important than your actual being a great photographer,
Of course.
And so so they were getting used to me.
Right.
And more and more my access was growing.
It sounds like you kind of were the link between the growth of I mean, you started the
In
website, you
South
really
America for
promoted
sure.
them. You really did help grow
Oh yeah,
the fanhood in Brazil. And it sounds like, of course, I don't know this, but it sounds like to me, just as a listener, the band kind of took notice that, hey, this dude is like really pumping us up. And
yeah,
now we're going to go to Brazil more often because we do have a larger fan base
yeah.
because of all of the work that he's put forward.
Yeah, it was basically that.
Yeah.
They give me more credit than it actually was, but I had a lot of like no they really do. They always say, oh, we only have South America because of Rodrigo, and it's not because of me, but I had a lot of uh, a big percentage
Of
of
course.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it
So that
sounds
was
like that.
cool, but it's very cool for them to acknowledge that and then
Exactly.
bring me in because most of the bands was just oh great that is doing a lot of work for free for us and just
Of
let
course.
him keep doing.
So that's a very expensive hobby at that point when you're
Yeah.
traveling around the United States photographing. Even if
Oh
it's
yeah.
like your the love of your life, it's like, dude, I'm spending a lot of money doing this.
Yes.
It's an
Yes.
extreme
Yes.
hobby at that point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what pleasure. I'm sure it
Oh
made
yeah.
you feel really like good about yourself and also
Oh
kind
yeah.
of like such a compliment to your artwork, such a compliment to your character and knowing that like not only do I have this skill that's been noticed, but I mean, surely you saw that you had you had some personable skills and that you just some validation that maybe you weren't the weirdo you thought you were because like
Yeah.
we all had that thought like that we're the
Yeah.
weirdest
Yeah.
people and so then that was some validation of like you're cool dude like we're good with hanging with you so that had
Of
to have
course.
felt really good.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It feel good. It still feels good to this
of
day. Yeah. Like
course it
yeah.
does
It's
and
very
that's
cool.
a
It's a cool
wonderful
story.
thing.
It's a cool story.
It's a very cool
Uh,
story. I think a lot of people, most people, I think, have a job that is not like their
uh-huh.
passion.
Yeah.
They do
Yeah.
what they do to get the bills paid and they go do that every day because they have to. And so, what a wonderful life to get to do something, even without the Dave Matthews Band, hitting all of these metal bands that you love so much. What a pleasure it is to get to do something that you're passionate about for your life.
Yeah. It's cool.
It
It's
is.
not easy as we
No,
become older.
of
It's
course.
just like more well, and I have like wife and I have a
Of
daughter. I have
course.
like 9-year-old daughter, so it's always like difficult to just stay away for like a month or 2 months. It's
I
not
can't
easy.
imagine because that's
Yeah.
a big part of being on the road is just leaving everyone behind or can we bring everyone with us and how does that change it and yeah I'm sure that it's such a hard thing to juggle like
Yeah,
you
and
know
also as I don't live in the US, like when we have like 4 days off, everybody goes home, and I can't just
you
go home and
can't.
just stay there. So sometimes I just spend like it's like 6 weeks in a row, like out of home, and I have like all the crew go home whenever they can, and I
Right.
have not complaining, but that's what happens.
Of
So
course.
yeah, and that's what happens, and it's not easy, and yeah. So, but
Right.
it's still fun, and I still love to do it, and also they touring at such a high level even to this day. We are so it's easy touring with them. I toured with a lot of metal bands, and it's not the same, although sometimes it's even more, how can I say, sometimes it's less. We don't have, how can I say it, the structure is not the same,
Sure.
but
Sure.
it's the same fun. Sometimes the structure we don't have, but with Dave is so much easier with good hotels,
Oh
days off
yeah.
between shows. Because
Right.
I just did a tour with Sepultura, the Brazilian band.
Uh-huh.
It's the coolest band. They are the nicest
So
guys in the
everyone should
crew.
check them out. Everyone that's
Sepultura is the
listening to
biggest
this.
Brazilian band. Sepultura is the biggest Brazilian band ever in the history of the. So who knows metal and heavy rock music knows Sepultura. So
Okay.
Sepultura is
Okay.
in the 90s they were like becoming the new Metallica, but the band split, and that's why they didn't.
Got
They
it.
were huge, but they're still going on to this day, and they are celebrating 40 years this year. So it's a
Wow.
yeah. So we just did a tour in Europe last November here. November, yeah, last November. It was 22 shows in 25 days.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh my
So
goodness.
we don't do that with Dave, for example. So it's way easier to travel. But
Yeah.
it was so fun, and the band is so cool, and the crew was so nice that it was not because on paper, when I got the dates, I was like, fuck, I'm so fat. Like, I don't have,
I get that.
like I can't, like, I don't, like, I can't, I'm seeing everybody killing each other in 2 weeks, like after I saw that schedule. And in the end of the tour, it was like this. And then everybody was so happy and the tour went so smoothly. So yeah, so
That's
it was really
amazing.
fun.
It's all,
Yeah.
that means all the right people are in the right places. When things just work, it's not coincidental. It
Yeah.
is the way things should be.
And metal, well, my experience is that metal people, besides the external faces, and like sometimes the metal fans look more evil than, but they are
That's
usually
true.
the nicest people. Are like my favorite people in the world are the metal people. And metal festivals, like, you never see so many, like, they are the most polite audience ever. If you go to, like, the only festival, when my wife was pregnant,
Uh-huh.
the only shows that she would go would be metal shows, because she always says, like, I feel way more protected, and I know that anything will happen to me in metal shows, and I don't go to other shows because the fans are not there only for the music. And in metal shows, people are there 100% for the
For the
music.
music,
So
yeah.
people are very, so they're not there to get chicks or to get, like, they're just there for the music.
Hmm.
And my wife would always say, it's like, oh, metal show, I would go like anytime,
Anytime.
but I wouldn't go. Yeah.
I've
So
only been
it's
to one heavy metal
okay.
concert, only one, and it
Which band?
was it was Metallica.
Metallic. Well, they are not. Well, they are metal, but it's
What
just a
are they? I
circus
don't
right
know.
now. No, they're very metal. No, they are very
Okay,
metal, but it's just they are so big now that you can't say it's a metal audience, because it's just became
everyone.
it's
You
just
want to see
everyone. Just
them
it's a
because their
circus.
name, I mean, their
It's a
name has
circus.
been
Yeah.
around forever. And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
definitely, I don't want to say I'm not a fan. I don't follow their music.
Yeah.
I grew up at the same time period you did. I'm born in
Yeah.
79. So in the 90s, like everyone knew Enter Sandman. Like everyone
Mhm.
knew that song.
Mhm.
Like that was
Mhm.
the song that, like, I don't care if you listen to them or not, you knew that song.
I think it's the
And
only song that they play in every concert, because they change the set list as well.
uh,
They have like 2 or 3 songs that they play every show,
is that one?
and
And that's one of
Enter
them.
Sandman is one of them. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, what I took away from that show, my husband is a huge fan. He likes metal.
Okay.
He took me to that show just slightly after we got married. And
Okay.
so I was like, oh, yes, I'm going to go. Like, it's
Uh-huh.
going to be fun because we're together and we
Yeah.
can do anything and it's fun. And I went there and I felt so weird just because I didn't know any of the
Oh
music
yeah. And people are passionate.
until they played the one. And I was like, finally, the one I know. But what I took away from that show was they visually, the concert was out of this world.
Oh
Out
yeah.
of this world as far as like what I could see. They were on a stage that spinned, and so like everybody was coming around, so you had
Oh yeah.
a good visual of like each person, but then also just their visual effects, like they had TVs coming down and like
Hmm.
moving all over the place and like different things on. I mean, I almost didn't watch the band as much as I just watched what was happening in the room because
What's
it
just
was
happening? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so much going on, like the music and then the stuff going around, and then they had like the drones that did this cool thing, and I was just like, wow. So I was
Yeah. Uh-huh.
totally entertained, just didn't know their music, which is just kind of weird feeling after going to concerts where like every verse
Yeah.
of
Every
every
song.
song,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
but it
But
was
yeah,
really awesome.
Metallica's, they became like it's way more like they became way more, way bigger than metal itself. It's just there.
How
It's
long
out
have
there.
they
It's
been a
yeah.
band, do you know, just off the top of your
They
head?
they started back in 80, I would say 82 or 83, something
So
like
when
that.
we were like 3.
Yes. Yes.
Forever.
Yeah.
Well, at
Yeah.
least our forever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Their biggest Black album, I think, is 90 something, 91 maybe. The Black album, the one that has
Mhm.
Enter Sandman, it's probably 91 or 92 or 93. I think it's
Wow.
93. But they had their biggest one is uh, before that's Master of Puppets, an album called Master.
I am
That's
familiar with that.
86 or 87.
Yeah.
That was their third album, and it's from 86 or 87. So,
And do you know why I'm familiar with that album? It's from
uh,
working in that music store.
well,
I've
see?
learned so
Yeah.
much about every band, about every genre. I mean, that's truly how I found, well, not how I found jazz. Jazz had been in my life a long time, but blues, bluegrass,
Yep.
country, just there are so many different kinds of
Oh, yeah.
musics. And there's there's something wonderful, I think, in every genre.
Yeah.
But then the crossovers, like you say, there's a lot of things that you can pull from any genre and find similarities in,
Oh yeah, and that's one thing that I love about Dave's music. It's just a mix of a lot of different.
everything.
They don't have a style. They are Dave Matthews Band,
Right.
and it's just a mix of a bunch of stuff.
It is.
And there's no limits to what they can add to their music. So they can
True.
do like a samba tune, like a Brazilian samba tune mixed with their style, and it would still be Dave Matthews Band. Or
That's
they can
right.
do, for example, Madman's Eyes. We were talking about metal riffs. Madman's Eyes is a metal riff, 100%.
Yeah, I hear that. And I just recently kind of picked up, I am a music nerd, as you self-proclaim yourself to be too. And I just keep digging, right? And so now where I am is really trying to pick up those riffs, right? And I am friends with Rob, who does the DMB Almanac, and I'm texting him every day. I think yesterday's text was, I can't remember what it was originally called, like pray something. And it eventually turned into Don't Drink the Water. Because I heard it and I was like, I hear it, but maybe I'm going crazy because I don't know.
Don't Leave Me Praying.
Don't leave me something. I can't think of the exact one. And I know anyone that's listening to this is yelling at us right now going, "Dur, dur, dur." But I heard it. And so I immediately texted Rob and I was like, am I going crazy?
Leave Me Praying, maybe. Or just Don't Leave Me Praying or Leave Me Praying. Something like that. It is. It is.
But that morphed into, that is like, from a fan, we haven't heard from Dave, but like we think that has morphed into Don't Drink the Water just because there's so many similarities in the sounds.
Yeah.
So I'm really focusing on things. He does. And I enjoy that. And I'm really enjoying throwing one song into another song and then going back to there's nothing that they can't do, and everything works for them because they do have their own said style. There is no one that is playing exactly like them. And that's what's wonderful about them in general, is there's a lot of music in the world that does sound similar to other people and is on purpose, maybe even. So I've never heard anyone, and I'd love to know your take on this. Have you ever heard anyone that does truly sound like them other than like a tribute band?
No.
That's really cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. It's all my really favorite bands, they all have their own style. There's no band that sounds like Rush. There's band that try to copy them or sound like them, but Rush is Rush, you know. And there's a lot of Jethro Tull is Jethro Tull. There's no band that sounds like Jethro Tull. So all my favorite bands are kind of just, I don't like bands that are very closed in one style that cannot play any other, so I like Dave because of that. One song is a jazz song, the other song is a very influenced by rock song, and then there's a lot of styles mixed into there's a songs that goes into a salsa jam in the end, stuff like that, which is really cool. And most of my favorite bands are bands that don't follow one exact music genre, just do whatever they like to do. Music is music. It's the same as countries, you want to do a imaginary line and say, this is Brazil, this is Argentina, but we live in the same world. It's the same thing. It's just a land, that someone said there's a limit. And music is the same. It's just music. There's bad music and there's good music and even then, what is bad music for me might not be bad music for you.
Right. That's an opinion, right?
That's all relative, So for me, there's good music for me and bad music for me also. But I like my music free in terms of we don't need to follow any kind of genre to be no boundaries, exactly.
Right.
So that's what I like the most when I'm looking for new music.
I think a lot of people fall in that. They just want to be, I think, I want to be surprised. I want to hear something I've never heard before. And so that's always the chase, right? I want to hear something in a new way, in a new shape. And so, the no boundaries, you can be a circle or you can be a square. And I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I like the flexibility. I mean, that shows how much flexibility a band has too, if they're able to just kind of do all of these things and do them well, what talent that shows, what talent that shows that you're not locked into one genre. You're not locked into just one way of playing this. You can do it 50 different ways. That just shows what talent lies within, because not everyone can do that. And
Oh yeah.
that, to me is everything when talking about this band is they've been doing it for so long in so many different ways throughout the decades. And I look at each decade very differently. Like there's the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and then of course we're in the 2020s. And I think you can see some change in each. You can see a lot of change in each decade.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think that that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing that they've just been able to do so much. So what does 2025 look like for you? That's one of the questions I like to ask. Some people are staying at home. We know that's not your case. So what does 2025 look like for you?
Well, it started well with Dave and Team Mexico. It was a great year
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Besides the weather, the
Yeah,
weather
it was
was
cold.
it was colder. Yeah, it was colder. It was not super cold because they were lucky. The days their show days were great. The problem was
Yes.
the couple of days before they started playing. During Dave and Team show days, it was pretty good. But the day before, the support bands, the day that only like the first day, the Thursday, right? I think it is the
Yes.
day. Yeah. So the Thursday was really bad, but then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it was pretty good. But yeah, so I started with that, and then I went to Brazil with two Brazilian Sepultura, this band, and
Yes.
another Brazilian band called Teatro Mágico. That also Jeff Coffin was there with us.
Oh,
I don't know if you
awesome.
saw, Jeff
I
was posting around.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so it's a Brazilian band that's very influenced by Dave, and I'm friends with them since forever. They were the support band for Dave in one of those Brazilian tours
Awesome.
long time ago, 2000. I think they were the support band.
Awesome.
They are friends, like the two bands are friends, and they all know each other. So they were recording like a live studio album, and they
Hmm.
invited Jeff to record it with them.
Oh,
So they
that's
brought
wonderful.
Jeff, and they brought me to document the whole thing. And also they invited, I think they did 3 shows with Jeff. So I was also there to get everything of those shows. And that
Yes.
was super fun.
Oh, I
Super fun.
bet.
Yeah. So that, and then I'm going to do the first half of the summer tour.
Yeah.
And on July, we'll come back to Europe. I have a tour with Sepultura here, just a few dates, but it's a short run this time. And after August, I don't have any much plans. I'm trying to stay home with my
Yes.
family.
Time to just soak up some family
Yeah,
time, because
yeah,
that's
family
a lot.
time.
That's a lot
Yeah,
of time away.
and
And
August is vacation from school vacation here.
yeah.
So yeah, so I plan to stay home,
Yes.
and yeah, and just work because I do a lot of stuff here in Lisbon too.
Of
So I
course.
try to just stick to stuff
Yes.
here and
There's
not
no place like
travel.
home, right? No
Yeah,
place like home.
and try not to travel a lot. At least working till the end of the year. I might get 1 or 2 more working trips, but I'll try not to do it a
Right.
lot. And that's it.
But
That's what the year is looking for me.
it sounds very busy. Does your family ever go with you to any like short? Yeah, they do. Good.
They
Good.
went to Mexico this year.
Oh, awesome.
My wife's going to the Brazilian shows because we have 2 more Brazilian shows this year.
Yes,
So
that's right.
it's
You have is a
June 7 and 8.
yes,
It's a
that's right.
festival, but they are the headliners, and so I guess it will be like 2 full sets. That's what the festival is saying. So I guess they
Wow.
do 2 complete sets there,
That's
and
awesome.
it's great. It's a Saturday and a Sunday in Brazil, and it's the first time ever the band plays 2 back-to-back concerts in the same city in Brazil.
Wow. I
So that'll be
know.
fun for the Brazilian fans because they never saw
Exactly.
2 shows without repeats. Because usually when the band plays for 2 nights, they never repeat a song. So
Oh my
people in Brazil that are going
God.
for the 2 shows will witness for the first time 2 different sets.
Are you hearing a lot of excitement, like a lot of chatter? Like, are people just like, can't wait?
Yeah. People are very excited.
Oh,
People are
that's
very excited.
wonderful. That's
So
so
that's cool.
wonderful.
Yeah, that should be really cool. And my wife's going to those 2 shows. So
Good.
she's flying from Lisbon there just to catch those 2 dates, and I'll go back to the US to
How
continue.
long is the flight from Lisbon to Brazil?
To Brazil is like
Yeah.
9 hours, ten
Well, it's
hours.
not terrible, but it is a long
Yeah,
time.
it's a long time. But usually it's but during night, so just sleep the whole flight, and when
Yeah.
we wake up, we are there. So
No
it's
better
not
way.
difficult. Yeah, it's not. I'm so used to it by now. So like, I don't care. Yeah.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for agreeing to be on the show just to kind of tell your fan experience. Of course,
My
that's what
pleasure.
everyone does on this show. And of course, your story is very completely different than everyone else. I
Yeah.
really enjoy the fact just hearing that perspective from someone that doesn't live in the United States. I just really enjoy that side of the story because I often say on this podcast that the Dave Matthews Band is not just strictly an American band. It is a worldwide. It is out
Yeah.
there. They travel a lot, and just reminding people that they're still out there. They're still very active. They're at the top of their game, is what I personally believe.
I think live has a live band. They are on the top of their game.
So yeah, they're
Yeah.
so good. And I also say, we don't know how much longer we have. We're going into 35 years. And so I encourage anyone that's listening to this or watching this on YouTube to definitely check out the Dave Matthews Band. You're not promised tomorrow, guys. And so get them while you can. Life is short, but sweet for certain. So definitely be sure to see them if you can. Well, Rodrigo, thank you so much for being on the show.
Very cool.
I appreciate you, and we will see you later. Guys, if you're listening to this on a YouTube or watching this on YouTube, be sure to check it out on your favorite podcast app. And here's the thing that you can do. Do the things that your children tell you have to do. You have to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And when you're there, leave a comment. All of that helps boost that up in the YouTube world. And then, of course, on whatever, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this, definitely leave a review. And that helps push this podcast out to other Dave Matthews Band fans. And of course, this podcast doesn't have a chance to continue unless future fans, new fans, current fans keep coming forward to share their journey. So if you're interested in sharing your personal journey, reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, and we'll get you scheduled to share your story. Rodrigo, thank you so much. And guys, in the meantime, until the next episode, peace, love, and Dave Matthews Band.